It is Wednesday, my dude, and you know what that means. It is time once again to revisit Adventure Woods, and we pick up basically where we left off. I appreciate that I pretty much start every episode with that phrase. We pretty much, start where we left off, but I guess it's true. So, shoot me. Don't. Here you can see I'm just sort of finishing off a few things with the wooden roller coaster that I built in the as the focal point of the last episode of this series. The reason I didn't show this in the episode in which I built the roller coaster is because I wanted to end that video with a POV to kind of it's a nice little wrap-up point for the video, and I kind of built I planted all of these things like the rocks and trees after filming that POV. So I thought for consistency's sake we'll show it in the next episode, just the finishing off of placing the foliage around the wooden coaster, but it ain't the focus of today's video. We're going to be building a flat ride and a restaurant area, specifically in that little loop. See, there's that sort of circle of path nestled into the bosom of the first curve of that wooden roller coaster. It was a bit of a puzzle, really, trying to think of something to place in that area of land. I toyed with the idea of placing flat rides there, and then I thought maybe just putting some plants or trees or some water, maybe like a water feature. And in the end, I decided to go with a restaurant. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm not there yet. I now need to just sort of border off this path edge here. One of the ways in which you can make a Planet Coaster Park look like it isn't a Planet Coaster Park. That sounds weird, but basically the most realistic builds of Planet Coaster look amazing. They look like photos, or at least CGI renders. They don't look like they were made in Planet Coaster, and that's a good thing. I mean that in a good way. And one of the ways in which you can make your parks look more realistic and less like they were just built in a video game is by building your own custom path edges, because the curbs that come with the paths in Planet Coaster, they're very big and cartoonishly bulky, and it's not a particularly realistic scale. So I like building, and it makes it a little bit less instantly recognizable, having custom path edges. Here you can see me again, I mentioned this earlier, trying to fill in that gap of land with something. I wasn't sure what. I tried a few different flat rides, didn't like any of them. So as you know, guys, my mind, it drifts, as these commentaries are evidence of. That was a real Yoda way of saying that. So I have now moved on to just building some pathways, and I started that tangent at the time with me building some more path edges. Now we're addressing another awkward spot of land that I wasn't quite sure what to do with. In the end, I decided to build this loop-de-loop ride. Oh, it's gone, but it will come back. There it is again. It's called... I don't know what the in-game name is. I'm now going to just open Google Chrome, as is tradition with this series at this point, where I just sort of start talking about something, realize I don't know, and just start typing things on Google whilst trying to maintain a commentary. Planet Coaster Loop-de-Loop Ride. Aha! I can't believe that worked. The Helion Ring. I guess it's not that critical that you knew the name of this game, of this ride in game. And now it's on screen, so it doesn't even matter anyway, because I clicked on the ride. So yeah, the Helion Ring. I placed it here. I've never been on one in real life. I have seen one in real life, and I thought, that looks horrific. I'm not going on that. I've heard that the general consensus of this ride is that it's a bit, people don't really care that much for it. I love roller coasters, but I hate everything else in theme parks. I get very, very motion sick on any ride that does a repeating action, which is basically every flat ride ever. With the exception of things like, I don't know, Dodgems, or I guess Ferris wheels, right? They're so slow, it's not really an issue. But yeah, I get terribly motion sick, which is kind of weird that I don't get motion sick on roller coasters. Because I guess roller coasters is constantly doing different things, so... Maybe, I don't know, there's some expert in the comments that is like a sick doctor who specializes in things that make people feel sick. Now I say it out loud, there probably isn't going to be an expert in the comments, but maybe you have a similar experience and empathize with my feelings and my thoughts and, what I've shared. I poured my heart out to you guys. Maybe someone out there agrees that they love roller coasters, they hate flat rides. For me, the absolute worst are pirate ship rides. I can't even go on swings. I'm talking about now just children's play parks, the swings. a swing, right? I can't go on those without feeling very sick. So you can imagine how I am with massive pirate ship rides. Can't do it. And this is basically a pirate ship ride on steroids, right? The Helion Ring. Yeah. It looks pretty horrific. So I would never probably go on one. Sometimes there are flat rides out there that I really like, so I kind of suffer through my own nausea just because they are fun rides. Classic example, and I bring up Alton Towers a lot in all my Planet Coaster series, but it's Enterprise at Alton Towers. Really fun ride. I hate it when I get off. I always regret going on it, but it's fun. Now, here is an interesting thing. I couldn't quite fill in a corner of the pathway there with the wooden beams that I built the fence bases out of. So I kind of extended some wooden beams out and tried to make like a sort of a ladder pattern. I thought I need a means to justify that. So I placed some park benches on that little ladder pattern. That's really hard to say 3 times fast. and then it just sort of ended up blooming into a full-on restaurant area. So yeah, trying to overcome the Planet Coaster path system ended up, shaping part of the park. We're not going to address that in this episode, though. I believe that's going to be next episode. Again, I've kind of just slapped a load of footage in Sony Vegas, and I feel like I've tried to divvy up the episodes in a way that, there's at least one focal point in each episode. It's not completely random. And in this episode, here we are now. We're dressing this little circle of grass, which, as I say, is nestled into the bosom of the wooden coaster. I did think about trying flat rides. I mean, you probably saw on the footage of me placing a bunch of different flat rides trying to find one that fit, and I just couldn't make one fit elegantly. So I actually went on the official Planet Coaster Discord server, and I said, mateys, I do not know what to do with this area. Flat ride, restaurant, help me out here, guys. And everyone said, do not build a flat ride. Make a restaurant. So here we are. So if this sucks, it's not my fault, guys. It's not my fault. I was peer pressured into making a restaurant. And it's fairly, there ain't nothing special about this restaurant. It's just a very generic boxy building, because I've said, a few times now in this series that this theme park doesn't really have a main theme as such. And it doesn't really have a super high budget for building. So I guess Disneyland doesn't really have a specific theme. It's just lots of extravagant buildings and zones and lands, but there's no main theme for the park. And that's what I'm going for, except none of the zones have real themes either. I'm trying to just sort of think. There are 2 areas in this park that have a very, very, very loose theme. And I say very, very loose because it's just the coaster station for that area that's got a very vague theme. And nothing is too extravagant. Although actually, I'm trying to think, there was a coaster I did very late on in the building of the park. No, I don't think that's got a theme either. It's a very unthemed theme park. Adventure Woods. Hello, everyone that's new to this series. I hope you're excited for that, massive, really, really good sales pitch of the theme park. But yeah, here we are building the restaurant area. So anyone that's played this game will know that the path system absolutely sucks. To build a food plaza is very, very difficult because basically picnic benches in Planet Coaster, you got to place them on a path. So obviously you have to build food plazas out of path pieces. And when it's a really awkward footprint, like the circular shape that when I addressed at the beginning, the path of this area that surrounds this area is an oval shape. You can't really make a nice gridded area for the guests to kind of eat their food in. So I had to kind of improvise and make a big wavy path system and connect it up and make out that this was the plan all along by adding planters in the middle, and that's why it's built like this. So hopefully people understood what I was trying to get across there, because I sure struggled now looking back and thinking about what I just said. Is there anything else I need to address right now? Just staring at the screen. I've mentioned many times before in this series that the footage I've got in front of me is playing back at very, very slow frame rate. I have proof watched all 4 episodes that have currently been out at this point. I say 4 episodes because I'm recording episode 5. So episode 5 doesn't exist yet, like in the world. Because I'm recording episode 5. You guys know how videos work, right? So there are only 4 episodes so far for me. I've proof-watched all of them, and there are moments where the footage is playing back way too fast. So I'm trying to slow things down a little bit, but now I'm kind of paranoid because the frame rate in Sony Vegas is a bit better than it has been in the past. So I'm hoping that doesn't mean that the footage is playing back way too slowly to be, for this video to be digestible. One thing I have done in the editing software is I've not added any color correction or post-processing effects. I've just sped up the footage to, the speed that you guys are watching it, and I've done absolutely nothing else to try and give my CPU as much of a fighting chance as possible. So that's probably a big help there. The restaurants here, by the way, are a Gulpy, which is a drinks restaurant. So drinks, not a restaurant, a shop where you can buy drinks, and a Pizza Pen. So fairly small building overall, but I feel like there's a Domino's Pizza near to me that's a very, very small building that's probably a similar footprint to this. The Gulpy, the restaurant, or I don't know, the drinks shop, isn't probably going to be any bigger than the footprint of the actual in-game shop piece, if that makes sense. In-game shops in Planet Coaster, those like one tile block size things, the cube structure, that it's usually way too small to realistically represent a restaurant. So you kind of have to build a bigger building around it to realistically simulate what that restaurant should be. It's got to have freezers, bins, and preparation surfaces, things like that. So that's what this building would be. It would be a Pizza Express, or whatever it's called, Pizza Pen. Sorry, Pizza Express is a real thing. As a Pizza Pen, with this building with the Pizza Pen building, there's all the freezers, as I've mentioned, the cookers, the freezers, the preparation areas. Gulpy, though, I feel like that wouldn't need a massive footprint, that shop. It's just going to be drinks, right? Maybe there's a basement to this building. I'm calling it now. Well, I'm declaring it now. There is a basement to this building. It is many, many thousands of square feet across. It's a very, very big underground complex. And that's why I can justify how small the footprint of this building is. One thing I did try and do, and I can't remember when in this footage I do this, and it's clearly not now, but here I am building a little doorway here purely to cover up that little bit of grass that was poking out. I needed to extend some of the wooden beams there to, again, cover up the grass, but I needed some way of justifying that. So I built the little backstage door there, and that's the building done there. And now I think is the moment where I justify the smallness of this building, and that is me here. Yep, yes, I timed it right perfectly. Yes, I'm sorry, guys. It's just a really big moment for me right now. I'm building a shutter door here. The idea being that there'll be some bigger restaurant just across the pathway here, where all the food is prepared, or at least stored, like the frozen components, ingredients, and there's just sort of wheeled across to the little restaurant hut here for serving up. I then realized later on, or at least thought, and hopefully maybe I realized because you guys agree, that that's a dumb idea, and yeah, let's not do that. It's a bit ugly having that big shutter door there, so I ended up getting rid of it. But, I try and keep things real, real, raw commentary, etc. So I'm leaving that in the footage there just so you can kind of see. Yeah, it's a good opportunity for you to see how the park evolves as I build it. Now I'm adding all the picnic benches to the eating area of this restaurant/drink store. And that's it. I think it came across pretty well. I'm still going to add some umbrellas, which I'm now adding, so that was good timing again. Guys, I'm on fire. Or I guess a slightly more self-deprecating way of wording that would be, this is how low the bar is, that me talking about the footage as the footage plays is considered a win. I feel like most YouTubers are better than that, including myself. I feel like in Kerbal Space Program, I'm more on it when it comes to talking about the footage. But again, I guess Kerbal Space Program stuff happens at a slower pace. Like the rocket or SST or what have you will begin its ascent, and then it just continues ascending for 10 minutes. So I can just talk at a nice leisurely pace. At Planet Coaster, things are happening so fast before your eyes that it's hard to maintain a focal point. And I was about to say just then that is the conclusion of the construction of the Pizza Pen /Gulpy drink store area. But whilst I was finishing my sentence, the footage is now crossfaded to this bit here. So we're just going to move on and pretend that I did a good job just then. Now, this part of the park I wasn't quite sure what to do with. It's the bit between the yellow roller coaster, which has since been renamed to Wicked Twister. I don't think I've added the ride sign just yet, but that's its official name. I think it's weird I never said that in the previous episodes, but it's called Wicked Twister. The wooden one, by the way, is called Wild Woods as well. But yeah, there's this bit of an awkward land space between Wicked Twister and the river. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. I thought about putting a flat ride in that Aladdin Magic Carpet Ride. I don't know what it's called, but it's a very long flat ride. But it just looked a bit awkward, and it wasn't really. I don't know. It kind of spoiled the view of the river. I feel like the river is a good place or a good opportunity to have a nice walkway for guests to look out across the water and see the other part of the theme park from it. That's it. So I thought in the end I'd just add a little footpath, but I thought I'd spice things up a little bit by adding a little garden. So I can see I've got this kind of crazy paving path just here in between this and the path that runs adjacent to the yellow roller coaster. Got a bit of a gap, and I've placed some red pathways. You hopefully you saw it just then while the footage was zoomed out. I'm going to add like a little garden in that space there, and then guests can sort of like wander through the garden. It's a nice place to have your lunch. If you brought a packed lunch or a packed dinner or whatever, you can sit there and watch the world go by for a little bit. You can't just go on roller coasters all the time, all day, because it's just. Actually, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't do that because you're at a theme park. But whatever. I'm just saying it's a nice little area for mum and dad. They've brought their teenage kids to the theme park and they've just gone off and done their own thing. And so mum and dad just want a nice place to just watch the world go by, just meander through some gardens, etc., etc. And that's what the purpose of this area of the park is going to be. Just a nice little, I don't know, little diversion from the thrills and insanity of the rest of Adventure Woods. I toyed with the idea of it being a bamboo forest. You might have just seen me plant some bamboo trees just there, but I ripped that very quickly because it looked a bit weird and ugly. So instead, I'm going to add some nice planter fencing just here along the edges of the red paths, and then we'll just plant some trees and shrubbery and just call it a day. But I feel like that phrasing undersells it. I am pretty happy with how this garden came out, actually. I think it looked pretty nice. I've said before in this series that the theme of this park is forest because that's the easiest theme in the world because you just plant a bunch of trees and that's it. But I feel like planting realistic trees and gardens is quite difficult because you've got to try and match up plant types, and flower beds it can be quite difficult to make them look good. So, there were things to consider, and I think I did a pretty decent job overall, and I kind of marked the entrances to the garden cut-throughs with these little illuminated light bulb arches, and hey, how's that? I think it turned out pretty well. Now we're just going to close off the rest of the dead space of this theme park. One thing I try and always do is make sure that guests cannot accidentally stray into the backstage area of any rides or anything else. Basically, like every single pathway is contained in some way. And in this case, I'm just sort of closing the pathway off completely from the backstage of the yellow roller coaster, which I've now said is called Wicked Twister, so I need not refer to it as the yellow roller coaster. But yeah, that's the thing I was doing there. This path obviously overlooks a, beach to the river, so I didn't want to add a big fence there in case guests want to sit on the grass in front of the river, but at the same time, I wanted to add some sort of pathway border, so I added this curbing with some lights that I'm now I placed them all on every single piece of curbing just so that the actual placement of the light on each given curb segment is the same, and then we can just delete as appropriate so that it actually looks realistic. But the placement of each lamp is now exactly the same as the placement of every other lamp relative to the thickness of the beam that it's on. I hope that made sense. Now, just for realism's sake, we're just going to add some life rings to some of the lamps, and I'm going to add these little posts here dotted along the coastline. I know it's not a riverbank, that's it. Along the riverbank, just so that if any guest falls in, they can be saved and can continue spending money at Adventure Woods. And there we are. That's it. I'm a capitalist. I'm a capitalist pig through and through. I think looking at the timeline on Sony Vegas very quickly, I think we're approaching the end of this episode. I apologize. In episode 1, I said I'm going to try and aim for an hour for each episode. But while I would like to have longer episodes, I do like the idea of having some sort of focus for each episode. So for this episode, it was probably the food court. It contained within the corner of the wooden coaster, but then we also had the Helion ring, and now I've got this little garden space. So I guess this was a bit of an admin episode, but generally I want a main focal point for each episode. And so I'm going to have to cut it there because we're going to build a bigger thing next time is my plan. So, yeah, I mean, when I'm building a big project, like a massive roller coaster, which they're coming, guys, get hyped, I'll probably make longer episodes. But at the moment, I'm building sort of smaller scale structures, which just, I can't really justify a longer episode. I just noticed there were some gaps in the structure of the wooden coaster station. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I thought I'd end this episode with a couple of POVs, the Wicked Twister coaster, which I'm seeing here, which you can see here, and the wooden roller coaster as well, just so you can kind of see how the POV looks with all the new scenery features. I'm going to shut up now. Well, I'm going to shut up now. I just wanted to not talk while it was roaring really loudly. I'm going to shut up now and let you enjoy. And that wraps up the POV of Wicked Twister. We can now do a crossfade. How was that for a seamless transition for the POV of Wild Woods? And here we go now. And that's it. I do hope you enjoyed. I now, unfortunately, cannot show a list of patrons because I realised that, like, because of the fact I record these commentaries very, very, very far in advance, it's not really fair that the Patreon list is going to be outdated and not accurate to my current Patreon list. So I'm going to break out. How was that for some nostalgia? My old intro, you know, pre-2021. Because I don't want to risk showing Patreon names and stuff because it's not going to be reflective of my current Patreon channel members. So I thought I'd show this outro. Hopefully you guys like it and it's a good little trip. And now that's it. That's the end of the video.